When looking at the theory of absolute and comparative advantage, we're making the assumption that there are only two countries in the world, that is, England and France. Now, those two countries are only able to produce two goods, bread and jam. Now, assuming that each country devotes exactly half of its resources to producing each of the goods, we're able to see that in England, we're able to make 15 units of bread and 30 units of jam, whereas in France, we're able to produce 10 units of bread and 5 units of jam. Now, what we're able to say is, with that year's worth of labour and using half of its resources producing each of those items, England has an absolute advantage in bread production because they're able to produce more bread, 15 compared to 10, and an absolute advantage in jam production because we're able to produce more jam, 30 as compared to 5. The question we then ask ourselves is it worth the two countries trading with one another? In other words, is it better for one country to focus on the production of one type of good and another country to focus on another type of good? Well, let's look at an example of this. In the UK, in England, in order to produce an extra unit of jam, England must give up half a unit of bread. So the opportunity cost of 1 unit of jam is half a unit of bread. Now compare this to France, where in order to produce an extra unit of jam, they must give up 2 units of bread. So we can see the opportunity cost of jam is much lower at 0.5 than in France, where the opportunity cost is 2. Now compare that to the opportunity cost of bread, where in the UK, if we wanted to produce an extra unit of bread, the cost of that, the opportunity cost of that, would be 2 units of jam. Whereas in France, to produce an extra unit of bread, the French would only have to give up half a unit of jam. Now this enables us to say that England has a comparative advantage in jam, whereas France has a comparative advantage in bread. This means that we can say a country's comparative advantage lies in the good that it can produce relatively cheaper. In other words, at a lower opportunity cost than its trading partner. This slide shows what will happen if each country specialises in the good that they have a comparative advantage in. So England specialises in jam production, so their production increases from 30 to 60, and the French specialise in bread production, so therefore their production increases from 10 to 20. So the question is, compared to this earlier scenario where we haven't got any specialisation in trade at all, how do we compare? Well, we can see that the world total has increased from 35 to 60 in jam production, but it has fallen in bread production from 25 to 20. So it's impossible to know for definite whether there's been an increase in welfare because the amount of jam has fallen. We don't know kind of how much relative value consumers place on bread as opposed to jam. So this next stage then allows us to show a situation where we're still making as much bread as we were originally, with 25 units of bread being made. Now we've achieved that by still France completely specialising in the product that they've got a comparative advantage in, but this time England has switched some of its jam production over to bread. So 10 units of jam has been sacrificed in order to make the 5 units of bread. So now we've got 25 units of jam being produced and 25 units of bread being produced and 50 units of jam being produced. So the bread totals have stayed the same, whereas the jam production has increased. So therefore we know that we're better off by specialising in trading. Now, of course, in the notes there are lots of caveats to this in terms of a number of assumptions that are made in this rather simplified model, but as a principle it shows that specialisation in trade does work.